Hello friends, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to create HTTP trigger functions in Visual Studio. And these two functions that we're going to create, we will be eventually using it to integrate with another function that will be integrated with the API connector in Azure AD B2C. So without delay, come let's get started. Alright, so I will show you how to create it, and I will also tell you what's the difference between the functions that we're going to create now and the functions that we've already created in the previous videos in my channel. So in order to create the Azure functions, I have opened up the Visual Studio 2022. I'm going to click on create new project, and here there is something called Azure Function by default for me because I've been using it, but you can come and select as function here. The moment you choose, you will see Azure Functions here. Click on it, click on next. I'm going to choose my location here, and then I'm going to have a name for this function. So the moment I gave a name, so that's the these functions are related to the e-commerce application that we're developing, so that's why I've named it this way. And then I can click on next, and here is something important that you should know. Okay, now if you expand this, I have installed .NET 8 as well in my machine. That's why all of these versions are showing up, 6, 7, 8. But very important to note, there are difference between long-term support and isolated long-term support. Isolated, whatever you see here, they run on a premium vCore. Okay, and the way the configuration is done for this type and the isolated is different. So I'm going to walk you through this time for the .NET 6 long-term support. I'm not going to see the isolated. The reason because for isolated, we are going to use the entity framework core, which is giving some troubles. It's really not working. So I'm going to go with entity framework core for this function. So I will choose .NET 6 for now. Okay. So I choose .NET 6. I'm going to choose HTTP trigger as my function, not any of the other functions. There are multiple functions. If you don't know, or if you're new to Azure Functions itself, I've given enough good videos on Azure Functions. You can go through those videos. I will give it in the description. But this time, we are just going to use the HTTP trigger function because one of the function is going to call another function, and that's going to be through the HTTP functions, like HTTP protocol. So that's why we need an HTTP trigger. So I chose this, and then I can choose at what level. It's not anonymous, definitely. It's not admin. It's going to be at a function level. All right. So we just need a SAS token. We will talk about it, but let's create the function. See, the moment it creates, what happens is by default, the template will bring up the default function. And if I try to run, definitely it will run. Okay. But here's the thing that we are going to do. I'm not going to write code and ask you to see the way I'm writing the code. We are not here for that. I'm going to literally walk you through important steps of this function and explain you the piece of code that I'm going to copy paste. That's more than enough. We don't need to type and then you keep watching what I'm typing. Alright, so let's save some time. And okay, so the very first thing that we have to do is, because we're going to use the entity framework core, we will install those packages. But all of these things, right, before we even further start. So what are we going to do? So basically, here's the idea. This is our e-commerce application, and we have a table called user profile. If you expand this, we have user information like display name, first name, last name, AD object name. You have already seen in my e-commerce database design. AD object name is basically for storing the the Active Directory object ID that is associated with each user in the Active Directory B2C. Now, the difference between this video and all other previous videos is we are going to build these two functions and eventually integrate into API connector, which means when you sign up or sign in or even update your profile, any of these three things happens. These APIs will be automatically called one by one, and your user informations like the display name, first name, last name, all of these things, whenever you change, these things we will update into our database right at that point itself. Okay, so that's a new concept, and we haven't done that, so we're going to do that new concept now. So that's why we are trying to build the functions now first. Okay, so what do we need? we need two packages to be installed. The first one is the Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. Okay, so I go to browse, like you can right click on the project, go to manage new package, search for this package, it will come, but do not just go and install. Okay, the latest version is 8. Because we're using .NET 6, 8 will definitely not become compatible. So you have to use their respective versions. The highest of 6 is 6.025. I will choose this, install this, and then I'll agree to it. Another package that we want is Entity Framework Core.SQL Server. Okay, so we're gonna touch this. Again, same thing. Go ahead and choose this perfect version. Install, it's gonna install. Alright, done. So you can also go to this project, double click here, the packages are listed here. Okay, you can also copy paste the package if you already know the version, but either way it will work. Okay, now if you've noticed, there's something called local settings.json. Okay, this is the local settings.json where this is like literally environment configuration, like how we have environment.dev.json, like app settings.dev.json, app settings.prod.json, right? So this is the environmental file. Here, because we're going to use the entity framework core, I'm going to do one of the configuration here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to copy paste a DB context server details. See, if I show you what it is, basically it is connected to my local database. That's the connection string. For you, the connection string is going to be a little different. You just need to change your server name, and if you have already followed the database structure, then you can literally use the same database name and password. All right. I prefer you to watch that video to see how to set up this, but I'll still give you the details in the description. Now we have done that. All what we have to do is, let's go to the function and do some changes in the function. So I will first copy paste the function, or I will even explain it first. So let's change the function name. I'm going to change the function name into user profile function, and this is the function class. This is the function name. So the first function that I want is update user profile. So I will change this. I will change the route to point it to this. Okay, now let's walk you through this. So this is basically, we are decorating this as a function. The name of the function is this. This is basically a public static asynchronous return type. Okay, see, iAction result is under Microsoft core.mvc. And where is this package is coming? We do not install such package, right? Basically, this is part of Azure.NET SDK functions. Because of this SDK only, that MVC is coming. Okay, that's why from .NET 6 and above, you can actually return iAction result instead of HTTP request message or response message. You don't need to use that. Okay, now we are saying this is the HTTP trigger at a function level, and we can, they are saying we can use get or post, but logically this method can use only post, because we are going to post some information from another function to this function, like the user details, and eventually we are going to save those information into the database. So we have to have only the post, not the get. Okay, so the difference between get and post is, get is going to have all the information in the URL. Post is going to have the data in the body of the request. Okay, so it's important to know the difference. We have to use the post here, HTTP post. All right, now we don't need all of these informations. I'm going to delete this. Okay, so we have deleted all of this information. So what we have to do is, now the next thing is, like I said, we already have the entity framework core. So if you look at this project is having 4 microservices, which I will be releasing the video shortly, but I've already done all these microservices, right? You have seen in the demo app. So I'm going to do, copy these entities and reuse it in my function. So let's open that. I'm going to copy paste this. So what I've copy pasted, basically all the 17 tables and the DB context. If you see the DB context, it's fairly easy. A class that inherits from DB context, so this becomes a context. Okay, and then it is having all of these 17 tables. Though we are not going to use all the 17 tables, I literally used everything here. In case we have to develop more functions later, we can do that. Okay, so that's why. So this is a simple DB context, and then all these are the 17 tables that you see in the SQL script. Okay, so we've done that, and also I've added a model called profile. So this is the idea. When we get the information from another function, we save it and we get information in this format. Whoever is going to call this is going to send these information, and we will send it back the information that is listed here. Okay, including the user ID. Whether they will use it or not, that's a different question, because we are going to see that as well. Okay, so now I'm going to copy paste this information. Let me remove this so it's easy to explain. Okay, so let's go one by one. Because the ilogger is already available in the parameter constructor parameter, you can use this log and log some information. This is logging. Now, in order for us to instantiate a DB context, it requires what it requires. Because it is inheriting this DB context, it has to send the options into its base class. See, the base of option is basically this option is going to go to this one DB context. Okay, so that's why we need it. Now, what we are going to do, so in order for us to send the DB context, we are first creating a DB context option builder of this type. Once you have this, we are saying use SQL Server and take the connection string from this location. So DB context is something that we already added here, if you remember, right? So it's going to take this connection string and pass it here, so that this will instantiate a DB context for us, entity framework DB context. All right, now we are good, right? So now we received the request. We are trying to read the body and then store it in a variable. If the incoming doesn't have anything in the body, we throw a 400 bat request, which is saying that it has to have the body. Now, let's say let's do this. Let's delete this because it is giving us error. Okay, so let's choose the right one. So JSON serializer, you can choose it from system.text.json, not the newtonsoft.json. Both are different. I will use this. So the deserialization will happen easily. Where is that? Here you go. So let's say the incoming body is not having empty thing, something. Okay, then we try to deserialize into profile. After deserializing, if the profile is null, we will still send a bat request. And if the profile is deserialized and if the AD object is not correct values, we will still send another 400 bat requests. So until here, all of these things, right? Until here, all of these things are validation. Now let's assume, don't focus on this. Okay, so let's assume everything is good. We try to use the table and try to get a record based on the AD object ID that is received. Now, if the user profile is found, which means the data is already inserted, probably this person trying to call is not the new person, existing person. So if it does not exist, we create an instance of user profile, and then we try to get the role, a default role from the roles table. Now, like I said, you have to definitely watch this. Okay, if you look at here, I already have a role table and I've inserted 4 roles, right? So I'm expecting this table should have these roles. Assuming that, what I'm trying to do here is, I'm trying to get the role ID for the role called guest. Anyone who comes into the system will get auto-assigned a role called guest. So I'm taking the role ID. I'm trying to put a role, like a new role, to this user role. So profile will have mapping to the user roles. So here, this piece of code is basically we are instantiating a new role, assigning the role ID and getting this new information to the user. Now this is entity framework core, so if you add any child object to the main object, everything gets inserted automatically. We will see that in the demo. Now the role is assigned. All right, now this piece of information is like specifically for myself basically, or an admin, I would say. Now what we are doing is, the user role will have that default role, correct? Everyone will have. Now what I'm doing is, I'm saying if the incoming email ID is this, make it as admin. If the incoming email ID is this, or many other email ID I can say comma separated, make it as support person. Okay, see, the reason behind all of these things is later in the Angular project we will see how different roles comes into picture for the e-commerce application, right? Like you can assume we are trying to build Amazon kind of an application. Okay, so this one will pick up that specific role. You see this, if the incoming is this admin user, admin is the role, if not support. It will try to fetch those user ID, I mean the role ID, and again it will insert one more to the user role. So if I try to log in with my learnsmartcoding@gmail.com, I will get guest as the role as well as the admin. Okay, now once you're done with that, we will use the entity framework like user profile.add, pass this variable like this graph has user role as well as user profile. Now once this is done, it will skip here, it will come here, it will save the changes, everything gets inserted. Then this object, right, then the object that we try to save will have the user ID, and then we reassign this user ID to the object and send it back. If this is not null, which means it's an existing user, which means all the roles everything is done already. So we just re-update the display name, first name, last name, and email ID, and we are done. Ideally, email ID will not change, so we don't need this. Only three properties we update. Ideally, email ID will not change. We will deal with only the 3 property updates, and I think we should be good. Alright, so this is the only function. This function does only this much thing, and what I'm going to do is, okay, so this user role table has something, so I'm going to delete it, and then when we run it you can understand it. Right now we have nothing. Good, so let's run this, and meanwhile while it is running, I'm going to open the Postman, and here let's expand this. See, everything is ready. It also says this is the function available and it runs on this URL. I'm going to copy this URL, open up a new tab in Postman. This is a this is a post, so use post. So I don't do anything here, like I don't send anything, and if I hit, basically see, request is received, executed, all these logs are coming, but we received a 400 bad request. Correct, that is expected only. Okay, now let's pass a valid information. Okay, so this is the valid information. If I pass this, it's inserted, and we got a user ID as 7. So let's open up and see if that was true. Okay, it did not come because I was using a wrong server, so I'm supposed to use my local server because it is now currently pointing to local server. Okay, now you can see this is the 7th record and we got some information added here. Okay, so stay here, let's do one more thing. So this is the Karthik Tech blog. Do we have it? We don't have it. Okay, so I'm going to do this, changing some value. Okay, so I changed some value, hit, I got the record, and let's run and see. See, the 8th record got inserted and user ID is 8. So look at here, user ID 8 has 2 records into this user role table. Basically there are 2 roles added, role number 3 and 4. So let's find out what are those. See, role number 3 and 4 is nothing but support and guest. So as per the logic, this one should have a support role as well as the default guest role, and that's why you see these 2 here. See, 3 and 4. Okay, so this is how we build an API, and this API can be then integrated into the API connector function. So function will pass this, and then all these integration will happen automatically. Don't worry, I will have a separate video for that. Now let's build one more quick function. So I'm going to stop this. So this time what we are going to do is I'm going to build a function called get function. I'm going to literally copy paste it, so we can remove the static keyword from this function, and then I'm marking this as partial class, which means basically the class name is same across different class files, and then when the DLLs are built, it will build into one single file. Okay, one single DLL for this function. Okay, so we have these 2 things. Let's go over get It's literally easy. So here, the important thing that you should know is we have a function name, and then authorization level is function, and then here it's not post, it's just a get and the route. Route is when someone calls get user roles / they have to pass the AD object ID. Okay, so when we receive such ID, we will going to do the same validation, go and check the user table. Like we're going to map the user roles and the user table and find all the rules, okay, for that particular user and show that to the user here. So db context dot user roles dot where we filter it, and then there's something called includes. Includes means user roles will have roles associated with that. So I'm trying to say include the roles and then finally select the role names. So let's run this. So when it runs, let's pick up that get you endpoint. Here you go. I'm copying this, open this. This time it's going to be get, and here we will replace the ID. So let's replace ID from here. Copy this, paste it. That's it. This user also has two, probably this user. Let's try this. See, this user has just one because he doesn't belong to all of those things. So here you go. What we have built is we have built two Azure Functions in Visual Studio, and we are preparing for our API integration so that we can use this to automatically save a user profile. And then not only that, we can even return the roles of a user and the user ID in the custom claims. That will be much interesting. So we will have all of the required information on hand in the bearer token itself. It will be very easy and convenient in the UI to integrate and control the user which page they can use. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video of this e-commerce app series. Thank you. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more tech tutorials. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified when we post new videos. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Happy coding!